So thanks a lot for joining to my talk. Can you hear me all well? Can you hear me? Perfect. So thanks a lot for joining my talk. Today I will talk about hacking these small IoT wireless doorbells. And this talk is kind of an introduction to or guide to IoT hacking with a focus on the communication itself. So for the live demos, I've also uploaded the Wireshark traces on GitHub. So if you want to follow along, you can do that. And yeah, you will find the link on more slides. So don't worry if you didn't get it here. So first of all, who am I? My name is Daniel. I'm a DevOps engineer by day, and by night I do lots of IoT hacking and bug hunting. You can follow my journey online under the handle @codebiter and on my blog. Now, so what can you actually expect from this talk today? So this talk will be about hacking the communication of the smart wireless doorbell. So first of all, we have a short look in the mobile application of it, and then a deep dive in Bluetooth low energy, how the protocol is built, and how we can sniff it. And last, there will be a live demo on how we can actually get access to the Bluetooth communication, and later on even get the video stream of the camera. So first of all, what is the actual target here? So I bought on Amazon some month ago a cheap wireless doorbell. It said it has Bluetooth communication and Wi-Fi communication, so I thought this might be a really good target, and let's just have a look into it. So this is the attack scenario I was actually looking at. So imagine you're having an evil neighbor who wants to hack you and see who is visiting you. So we call him evil neighbor for now. And this is your home. You have your Wi-Fi router, you have your phone in it, you have your PC and your desk in it, and the front door is your wireless doorbell. Now your evil neighbor tries to get as much into your network as he can. So on IoT devices, there are more attack vectors out there. So first of all, we can start on the mobile application itself. So for this doorbell, there's an Android app that you can install in your phone. And we can try to look into this, see if we can find any vulnerabilities there. From there on, we can actually propagate more in the communication itself. So we can have a look in the network communication of the mobile application, but also the network communication of this doorbell itself. And because it's communicating over Bluetooth low energy, we can also have a look in that. And obviously, we are at hardwear.io, so physical access is also an option for us. So let's start right there. So there are lots of talks today about hardware hacking, so I decided this one will not be that much into hardware hacking because my scenario of the evil neighbor is that you actually only have access to the wireless communication of your neighbor and you don't want to break the doorbell. But yeah, in general, you can always look in these cheap smart cameras. They usually have these UART pins, so ground RX-TX. You can connect a USB to serial adapter to it, and then often you can get logs and even a root shell. But yeah, so the more important target here is actually the mobile application itself. So you can get on the Google Play Store and on the App Store this app called X Smart Home, where you can actually set up your doorbell. You get notification when somebody rings it. And you can get also a video stream if it's like activated. So we can have a short look in it. And so yeah, that's the application. You have your doorbell. You have your record who actually visited you. And if you trigger it, it should launch a video stream. So say hi to the stream. And yeah. So our attack scenario is we want to get access to this video stream. So how can we analyze Android mobile application? So there are a lot of tools out there. You might know the most common ones are JDEX. So JDEX is a decompiler for the bytecode in your Android app to Java code. You can do from there some static analysis, look if there are any vulnerabilities in there, which functions are used, or if you can find some secrets. If you want to actually see what the application does dynamically when you are using it, you can use Frida. Frida is a dynamic instrumentation toolkit. So you can actually take a Java function and trace it. Whenever it's called, you can see, for example, the arguments. You can override the implementation of it and do a lot of fun stuff with it. And if you just want to have a look at the network communication, Mitten proxy or Burp Suite, those are like really nice proxies to actually dig more into the API calls. So where are we going to start from this analysis? So first of all, I want to look in the mobile application and the communication between the app and the Wi-Fi router. So there I did, just for analyzing the communication, we need access to the plain text API calls. So that's why I used FreeReader to actually disable the SSL pinning and verification. And then I connected the app to my Wi-Fi router. From there I forwarded all the network traffic to my reverse proxy, Mitten proxy, Burp Suite. And so I could look in the plain text network communication. As you can see here, it's a bit small, but it does a lot of API calls to home.nextcloud.com, some GET requests and POST requests. And as you can see, it's always SSL encrypted, so it should be more or less safe. Of course, you can look more into the actual content of these API calls and try out different JSON formats, but in this case, for me, it was already enough to see that it's encrypted, so your evil neighbor, even if he's in your network, he does not get access to the communication directly. But is it actually properly validated, this certificate? Because if you're using SSL, it doesn't actually mean that you cannot really get the data from it. And so to test the certification, validation implementations, you can use a really nice tool called CertMitten. It's from Arpo. He's also here at hardwear.io. So if you meet him, you can talk to him. And what it actually does, it's a man-in-the-middle attack. And if you request an API call from a server, it tries to intercept it and test different SSL vulnerabilities in there. So for example, you might replace the certificate with a self-signed one, or you might take the original certificate, replace the key in it, and so on. So I actually ran that tool, and as you can see here, the home.nextcloud.com domain, that's all white, so white is good, red is bad. And yeah, so this is actually properly validated. Only for error.dcloud.net.cn, there are some vulnerabilities potentially in there, but I assume that's just some error logging, and I looked into the content of it, and it does not really contain sensitive data. So that's why I said, okay, the communication between the phone and the Wi-Fi router is actually kind of secure. So far, no luck for our evil neighbor. So what else can we do? Of course, during the setup process, we have to talk via Bluetooth Low Energy with the doorbell. So I want to look more in that, and therefore let's look first in the protocol of Bluetooth Low Energy. So yeah, if you set up your doorbell, you have to do it via Bluetooth Low Energy, and that's what our evil neighbor is trying to get. Now the Bluetooth protocol stack looks a bit like this. So you have your controller with your firmware, and you have your host OS. Now on the controller, there's actually running the physical layer, so where the radio frequency signal is created, and the link layer. And the link layer, all the MAC addressing is done, and for Bluetooth, even some MAC layer encryption is done. Now, of course, this is quite firmware specific. So for example, this would be on this USB dongle, but you actually want a unified way to talk to it. And that's what the host card interface does. So it's also called HCI interface. And it's like the interface between the software and the hardware. And if you're researching vulnerabilities, this is a really nice way to capture the packets, because here they're all unencrypted and you have perfect reliability to actually capture them. Now on top of the HCI interface is the host OS with some more protocols. L2CAP, we're not really going to dive more deeper into it because it's like multiplexing and not that relevant in our scenario. But the most important ones are ATT and GET. Now ATT is the attribute protocol, and it actually defines how you can write and access the data. So on a Bluetooth server, you have your data, for example, your heart rate, and you actually want to access it. You need to read the data or write it and so on. And the ATT, the attribute protocol, defines the rules how we can actually do that. So you can read stuff, you can write stuff, you can get notifications. So for example, if your hardware changes, and you can get indications. So indications is more or less the same as notification, but you have to acknowledge it if you received it. Now that we actually know how to access the data, we still need to structure it. And that's what the generic attribute profile does. So in short, it's GATT. And you can compare it a bit with the HTTP server, where your data is organized in a hierarchical structure. So for GATT, you have services and characteristics. So characteristic is actually one value that you can actually write to, and a service groups multiple of these characteristics together. So for example, on this smart doorbell is a simplified way what is running on it. So you have two services. First of all, the generic access one and a custom one. Because in the Bluetooth Low Energy protocol, these services, some of them are standardized. So for example, the generic access one offer heart rate and so on. And you can reuse those and you immediately know what they mean. But you can also implement custom ones and then you only know the UUID. But if you want to know what is actually behind them, you have to do some reverse engineering and look at the values. Now the generic access service, for example, has multiple characteristics. In this case, the device name and the appearance. And every characteristic can also have some descriptors. So a different way to show it is here. You have your GATT server with multiple services running on it, and every service has multiple characteristics or can have multiple characteristics. So for example, here we have a characteristic with the descriptor battery level and the properties if you can read, write, or notify. And it also contains the actual value of the battery level. So the nice thing about Bluetooth Low Energy is you can actually enumerate these GATT servers really easily. There are a lot of tools out there, and just to show you two ones, you can use NRF Connect. For NRF Connect, you can run it on your desktop PC, and you need like these NRF 52840 dongles. And then you can enumerate all devices around you. And there's also a mobile application that you can try out in the App Store and Google Play Store, where you can do the same. Another alternative would be BetterCap. So that's usually more known for Wi-Fi hacking, but you also can use it for Bluetooth Low Energy. So I want to show you a short demo of what actually BetterCap shows for this smart doorbell. So we can just run BetterCap. And first we have to set the recon on, so we're actually listening to all the devices that are advertising around us. So I see a lot of people in the room, so a lot of advertisements, so I hope the demo actually works today. And first of all, I'm setting the doorbell in pairing mode. And now it's showing up because it's in pairing mode. And then we can actually enumerate it. And let's stop the recon to have less noise. And you can see here, you have the services and characteristics. So for example, as before, the service would be generic access. And the characteristic is device name and appearance. Now these services and characteristics always have these UUIDs to identify them. But there are also shorter versions for them, like these handles here. Now each characteristic has a property if you can read, write it, or get notifications. And in this case, you actually get the data directly if it's readable. But as you can see here, it's not really telling us a lot. It's like appearance unknown, and the values here are not really useful for us. So from the enumeration itself, we didn't get a lot of information about the doorbell yet. But, of course, if you're communicating with it, you can also sniff the communication. Because Bluetooth uses a shared medium, in this case the air more or less, and we have the same access to the shared medium, so we can sniff the communication. And there are different ways to do it. So of course an attacker has to capture the BLE communication over the air. But if we are just researching it, we can actually capture them directly from our device because we have full control over our phone. So we can just hook the HCI interface and sniff all the packets there. So for Android, that's really easy to do. You can go in the developer settings, enable the Bluetooth HCI snoop logs, and then all your Bluetooth packets are logged and saved in a log file. And you can just pull them from your phone and open them in Wireshark. Now you can do that with ADB bug report. Then you get like a zip archive with a lot of log files, and one of them is the BT Snoop HCI log. Now that's even possible if your phone is not rooted. If your phone is rooted, it's a lot easier. You can just pull the file directly, and you have access to the logs. Now, if you don't always want to pull the file, you can just pipe it through a port on your phone and access it in Wireshark directly, so you can actually see live what you're doing. So if you open Wireshark, for example, you can see here the network interface, the Android BT Snoop net. And now here you can see a lot of advertisements. And if you're connecting to something or sending some data, you can actually see the real packets in there. So yeah, this is really nice for us to research the communication and develop exploits, but our evil neighbor does not have access to our phone, so he actually has to sniff the communication mid-air. But there are also a lot of tools out there. So one really common one is NRF sniffer for these NRF dongles again. There's a firmware available from Nordic Semiconductor, so you can just flash it directly and then open it in Wireshark. But my favorite is actually Sniffler. It's like a tool to sniff Bluetooth Low Energy communication for Bluetooth 5 and also 4 that uses these Texas Instrument boards. They're like $40, and they also support Bluetooth 5 extended length advertisement, and you can actually capture advertisements from a specific target MAC on all 3 primary advertisement channels. Now, this tool was also presented at hardwear.io like 2 years ago or so. So thank you a lot for making it open source. And yeah. So what can we actually capture now? So I want to do this as a live demo. So let's see if it actually is working. So first of all, for Sniff LE, we have a Python CLI. So we can just launch the sniff receiver. It's a Python script, and then we can just add our MAC address that we actually want to sniff. In this case, the -e means we are also sniffing for extended advertisements. We are saving it to a trace file to open it in Wireshark. And in this case, we're only listening on advertisement channel 38, and yeah. But this is how we can actually sniff the communication. But what do we actually want? So if you're setting up this doorbell, you have to connect it to your Wi-Fi so you can actually see the video stream. So in this case, you have to set it up via Bluetooth and send the Wi-Fi credentials directly to the doorbell. And our goal is we want to get these credentials. So let's try it out if we can actually do it. So first of all, we are setting our doorbell in pairing mode. And then it should start showing up. You can see here now all the advertisements. It says smart doorbell. So we see it's already advertising. Now we should get a pop-up in the Android app that a new device is ready for pairing. And we can just add it. So then we can select the Wi-Fi hotspot that we want to connect it to with our really secure password. And let's give it a try. Okay, the live demo effect, it stopped communicating, but it actually just sniffed the advertisement packets. But we can give it a second try. So here we're putting our doorbell now again in pairing mode. And you can see now it's advertising, so it's showing up in the Android application. And we're connecting it again to our phone. And now you can see on the right side, it's showing not the advertisements anymore, but the actual communication that was sent through the communication channel. So we actually followed the communication and was able to sniff all the packets. Now it actually stopped transmitting stuff because it already sent all the packets that were needed, and now it just tries to log in our network. Now, if we look, for example, further up, we can also see here some actual data that is being transmitted. So now, so what we did is we ran the sniff receiver on our MAC address and captured all the packets. So the demo worked, so I didn't need the backup recording. And yeah, now for you the challenge, and you can even follow along because I uploaded this Wireshark trace file on GitHub. It is the sniff BLE capture file. And you can open the Wireshark and see if you can actually find my Wi-Fi password in it. And yeah, we're going to do this live, so otherwise you can just join and watch. So before we recorded the file to doorbell.pcap, so we can just open it. And this is all the communications that was actually sniffed. So in the beginning, you saw all these advertisements with the name Smart Doorbell. So that's what's actually in the beginning here. And then some scan requests and responses were sent. So that's just normal scanning that's going on in the background. But if we scroll further down, we see the protocol ATT. So that's the one you saw before where you can read, write, and notify. And that's actually the interesting part. So we can just filter for it here in Wireshark, and now we only have the communication with the GET server. Now you can see here a lot of different things that were sent. So in the first part, it just does a lot of enumeration, which characteristics are out there, and so on. And in the end, it actually does some write requests. So for us, we want to get the Wi-Fi password. So it is probably writing the Wi-Fi password to the doorbell. So that's what we're actually interested in. So we can just filter now for these packets. So in Wireshark, you probably all know it already, but there you have all your headers, and that's like your payload that was actually sent. And in BLE, you have the opcode. So in this case, the opcode is we are preparing a write request, then to which handle, so to which characteristic are we sending it, and the actual value that was sent. So we can also just filter for these write requests. And you might already see down here in the payload, the value is actually just some ASCII code, and it looks a bit like a JSON. So we have the brackets, the S, rogue AP2. If you remember before, that was my Wi-Fi hotspot name. And we have 4 of these packets. Every single one has an offset. So the JSON that was actually sent is a bit longer, and it was split in multiple packets, and that's what the offset is used for. Now if we combine all of those, we have this JSON. The S stands for the SSID, in this case rogue AP. The P is the password 1234567 and the U is the username. In this case, I did not log in the application, so it just assigns you automatically one, which is called tourist, and then some random ID. So what can our evil neighbor now actually do with this information? So imagine you were at home, you paired your Wi-Fi doorbell, and your neighbor was able to sniff the communication. So he now actually knows your Wi-Fi password and can log into your Wi-Fi router, or at least in the network. And from there, you have access, first of all, to all the devices in your network, and you can also launch man-in-the-middle attacks and stuff like that. So that's actually what we want to look in next, because we are now in the network and we want to get access to the video stream. So therefore, we need to know what is actually the communication between the doorbell and the Wi-Fi router. So therefore, let's look a bit in the actual networking stuff. So to capture it, the setup is really easy. I connected a Wi-Fi router to my PC and the doorbell to this Wi-Fi router. And I captured just all packets with Wireshark, nothing else fancy. Now, if you want to follow along, I also uploaded the Wireshark trace file of the video stream to GitHub, so you can also have a look in that. So we can just open it. And this is now all the networking communication. So as you can see in the beginning, it's just some DHCP, ARP requests and so on. So not really that relevant for us if you just want to get access to the video stream. Then later on, there's some TCP packets because you're actually ringing the doorbell and triggering it. And once it's triggered, you saw it before, it actually starts a video stream. So now the video stream is started here, and you can see it's a lot of UDP stuff. So we can actually just follow the UDP stream. And if you show it as hex dump, it's probably a bit small for you, but we're just looking for one specific stuff. So first of all, in the beginning, you have a lot of JSON plain text data, like the username, which device you're using, and so on. And later on, you have just some video stream data. But if you look more closely, we can actually find here these letters JFIF. So most of you might already guess what it is, because this is the file header for the JPEG file interchange format. So in the JPEG format, you have as a file header, first of all, the start of the image, which is FFD8. Then you have the application marker, FFE0. Then you have the length. Then you have the identifier. And the identifier is actually the ASCII of JFIF and a null byte. And then you have the version. And now this hex dump is actually the one we saw before in the Wireshark file. So we can see, if you're launching a man-in-the-middle attack, we can get access to this video stream via UDP, and it's completely unencrypted, and it's just a bunch of JPEG files that are sent via UDP. So yeah, I just wrote a really simple Python script to actually extract the payload from the Wireshark traces, and if you can just print this image, so in this case, this was a photo I actually recorded. But there's actually one more thing in the Wireshark files. And if you look in it, outside of the UDP stream, we can actually see that some communication is also done via HTTP. So even that traffic is not encrypted at all. And if you look into it, it says like which device is. So first of all, we are sending a request to the API to actually ring the doorbell. Now, therefore, we are setting a couple of parameters, like which device it is, apparently also the battery, and some base64 encoded stuff. Now, if we decode it, this is actually an image, which is also the same JPEG format, and that's the image that is the preview when your doorbell is ringing. So what we can do here, we can just either send this API request on our own and trigger the doorbell application on your phone as if somebody was ringing your door. And we can also just replace the payload to actually show any image of anybody who we want. So in this case, this guy is on the preview of your doorbell. And because the UDP stream is also encrypted, there we also can change anything we want. So yeah, just to recap, now this was our attack scenario. Your evil neighbor tries to get access to your doorbell without having to touch it or without any other physical access. So he was able to sniff the Bluetooth communication and compromise your local network. Now from there on, he does not only have access to all your other Bluetooth devices, but also your doorbell. And there, all the communication is unencrypted, so we can do whatever we want and replace any images, video feeds, and so on. Now last, what can you actually do to protect yourself? So this is quite hard here because the doorbell and the communication itself is quite proprietary and you cannot really flash it on your own. So what you can do is you can connect your doorbell to a separate Wi-Fi network. So even if an attacker would be able to sniff it, he does not have access at least to other devices of yourself. And if it's possible, also try to set up the doorbell in a trusted environment where no other people are around, if that's possible. Or otherwise, try to get more secure products. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining. And are there any questions? And also I brought some...
Thanks, Daniel.
I brought also some more wireless doorbells. So if anybody wants to take them apart, hack them, or do stuff with them, just come to me afterwards.
Sounds almost like advertisement. So do we have questions in the audience? Daniel, don't be shy. Yes, we've got one.
So because sniffing the Wi-Fi password requires the attacker to be present during the initial setup, did you look into or find any bugs that you could essentially cause an error in the doorbell to like force it to go into a mode where you would force the home user to like reset it up? Because otherwise, if the evil attacker misses the first setup, they need some way to like cause a setup again.
Yeah. So first of all, I also tried after the setup to look at the Bluetooth communication, but the Bluetooth service actually completely shut down. So you cannot do anything there. And the evil neighbor would not be in your network, so you cannot really get access to the API calls or open ports of the doorbell. So the only thing you could do is like you actually jam the Wi-Fi network, hoping that your neighbor would actually repair and reprogram the doorbell and do it there.
Okay, yeah, like actual wireless jamming, or if you had any sort of like denial of service bug against the device, just to break it enough that the user has to hit the reset button, essentially.
Good. Do we have, yes?
So essentially the doorbell is hanging outside.
Yeah.
So did you look into the possibility to extract the Wi-Fi key outside? So if the neighbor is not there, you go over and take the camera and extract the Wi-Fi password?
Yeah, so if you actually open it up, the JTAG and UART both in there and not secured at all, so you can look in that. But I didn't follow up on that further because my attack scenario is you don't even want to open up the doorbell. That might look fishy or you might get caught. So it's like if you're just the neighbor sitting in the next room, it's like a lot more stealthy.
All right, I'm coming for the next question.
Thanks, Daniel. Nice talk. So basically, because the whole thing is not quite secure, I mean, for sure the smartphone app is also not very secure. Did you look like forcing some RC server through whatever stream, but you might think BLE or Wi-Fi from the...
So yeah, I haven't really looked that much more in the smartphone app. I just looked that the communication is encrypted. And yeah, it doesn't even communicate with your doorbell directly, it just communicates with the web server. So the actual logic in the application itself is quite low. But yeah, I didn't really follow up on that.
All right. Do we have any last question to Daniel? All right.
Two questions. I'm sorry if you already presented them. First one is, what kind of Bluetooth pairing is happening? I mean, like, if you were able to sniff what was, then I'm wondering what kind of pairing happened there. And second, do you know for the sniffle, what kind of bandwidth is actually capturing? Because I know Bluetooth, low energy has quite a few channels. So I'm wondering if the sniffle can actually capture all the frequency bands.
Good questions. I don't really know that the whole band. Yeah.
So there is no Bluetooth low energy. So
there was no pairing. Like most of the devices just do not use the link layer encryption.
Okay.
And for Sniffly, it just like listens for the initial packets that are on free advertising channels. And Sniffly has this trick to listen for them in sequence. So that's what Sultan actually figured out. So he always catches the first packet, and when you have the first packet, in the connection request, you have the hopping sequence, so we can follow the hopping sequence.
That's really cool.
And also, I don't know if you have investigated other smart locks or whatever, but everyone that I have investigated, they send the Wi-Fi credentials in plain. Yeah. Also, my one, if you press this button long enough, this doorbell button, it goes into like maintenance mode, so you can connect to its Wi-Fi. I haven't tried Amazon Ring yet for this.
All right. I see that the discussion is going. Do we have any other question? All right. Let's give another round of applause to Daniel.